thank you everybody for joining us today. I'm joined by Dream Data CMO Stefan Hedebrandt, and we're going to be walking you through the modern LinkedIn ads playbook. I'm very excited about this because it's based on a lot of the playbooks that we've been kind of running for ourselves and clients, and also that Dream Data themselves have been running as well. So we kind of co-collaborated on some of these as well, which is super cool. So before I get into the meat and bones, Stefan, I'm just going to quickly hand over to you to quickly introduce yourself to everybody.
Thank you so much, Patrick, and really happy for the invitation here. Well, the short story is that I'm, as you said, Stefan. I'm one of the co-founders of Dream Data, but my day-to-day practice is like leading the marketing team from kind of before you've heard about Dream Data until people end up booking calls on our website and hopefully following those deals all the way through to pipeline created. So that's kind of my day-to-day job. I think overall in my career I've been an inbound marketer by trade, so like kind of singling out a specific target group, a specific tribe of people, a specific type of ideal customers, and then doing whatever we can to appear very big in front of these accounts. And one of the ways that we've found really effective at Dream Data specifically has been LinkedIn, both organic and paid. And yeah, really looking forward to share some of the things that we've found working, and obviously also some of the bits that did not just pan out as we planned them to.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that, because I'm even looking through some of the stuff that we had prepared today, and I'm like, there's some asides, some side notes that I need to drop in just based even on new data, which I think is a really good thing to kind of highlight before we even kick things off, which is when it comes to these playbooks, they're really, really good starting points, but they, the application of them varies from business to business. The platforms themselves are changing all the time, and buyer behaviors are changing all the time. And so they do need to be kind of regularly reviewed and tested against. But with that said, topics that we're going to be covering today. So first one is the best way to track and optimize your LinkedIn ads campaigns. From there, we're going to talk through how to actually plan a LinkedIn ads budget for demand generation, because I would say of all the things we're going through today, this is possibly one of the most overlooked and one of the biggest mistakes that I see companies make. From there, we're going to be running through some demand generation plays. So this is, think cold prospects, cold account lists, plays that are really good for generating awareness and getting more pipeline. And then we're going to focus in on one of the kind of key functionalities of Dream Data, which is in-market activation plays, and something that we've experimented a lot with at Client Boost this year. And I know that Stefan has at Dream Data too, specifically with the intention of helping companies close more deals, which I think for me, when we can start having that conversation, not just about awareness and pipeline, but also how we're helping to close more deals and increase net revenue of a company, increase profitability of a company, it can really, really help marketing have a bigger, stronger seat at the table, and more respect at the table too. With that, I'm going to finish up with 12 new top performing ad templates for creative inspiration if we have time. If not, we will get those out to people afterwards, because I think that'd be some fun inspiration for everybody. So with that, Stefan, I'm going to jump onto the first slide and just kind of hand over to you to talk everybody through time horizon expectations. So I know you have a lot of cool data that you've collected at Dream Data on that.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. And I think this is one of the first things people that wants to be successful on LinkedIn, meaning both from an on-platform metric, from a pipeline created, but also kind of for kind of internal comms, internal marketing for marketing at your companies, getting the expectations set right if you want to be successful with like a LinkedIn project like this. Dream Data is like an official marketing partner of LinkedIn, which gives us access to special APIs, one being the company intelligence API they just released. And that helps us go really deep in understanding not just the traditional metrics that marketers track, which is like somebody clicked this ad and came to our website, or somebody submitted a lead form and now we know who they are. LinkedIn actually also gives these selected partners like us access to impression level data on accounts, as well as engagement data, which means engagement here means that you flip through a carousel, you expanded the ad, you clicked on the ad to see a larger image and stuff like that. So we have a very strong account level view on how LinkedIn ads work, but also how they kind of translate into money over time and how much time does it take. So if we start with some numbers, the ones you have on the right side here, which is one that is like was a bit of an eye opener for me, Patrick, was that kind of the funnel shaped one. That like from first ad impression on an account until you win it, it's almost 320 days. It's an immensely long time to kind of having to wait. But I think it's also the reality of you going from a company that somebody who's very busy have never heard about to kind of making enough impressions, making enough value built for somebody to actually reach out to your company. So if you start running LinkedIn ads today, you're not going to see pipeline before the end of the year. It's a play where you select a lot of accounts and slowly you start warming up these accounts. And as you start to learn these accounts better and become better at writing messaging for them, making creatives for them, you can convert them faster and faster. And actually, one of the numbers I spotted here is the difference between the first ad impression and the first ad engagement, which is 320 days versus 235. So I believe it's like, if I'm not mistaken, like 85 days of time difference. So if you like do like a simplified analysis of that, is that if you create ads that engage the audiences that you put in front of them, you cut off almost 3 months of the sales cycle. So that puts on the pressure for us in marketing to make sure we understand who we're targeting and we create creatives that like the audience actually want to consume and to engage with. But seeing these numbers as well also means that you can't, you shouldn't overpromise the short-term impact. You should also speak with sales about. For me, it also means that you need to know kind of the demand needed by the sales team. If Q4 is the largest quarter of the year for your sales team, it's not kind of let's switch that on by the end of September or something like that, because then you wouldn't have planted enough seeds throughout the year for the sales team to go out and harvest them. And then if you haven't done this alignment and expectation setting, everybody's just going to be unhappy. You started the ads too late and you'll blame the sales for not telling you earlier, but sales will also not hit their sales target. And then you have this old clash between sales and marketing. So my best advice is to realize that LinkedIn ads is not kind of a quick fix, but it's a long-term, let's call them awareness raising amongst very, very, very good targeted accounts that your sales team that will then be able to close months later. So I'll just pause there, Patrick, and let you kind of chime in.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I think the interesting thing for me, I'm thinking there about the length of these sales cycles. It was one of the first thoughts that I had when I saw that number. And so, first ad impression to revenue, if the average is 320 days, then what that means is, potentially up to 50% of the deals could even be twice as long as that as well, right? So it's to some degree there could be, first impression, 2 years ago for some companies, which is a really important thing to keep in mind. And I think anecdotally, for me, one thing I see a lot of, and I've used an example buyer journey here, taken directly from within our own kind of instance of Dream Data, and what we see is, this one here, I think, started. January 2024 was the first ad impression. This is really, when the sales conversations started happening. So first ad conversion wasn't until May 2025. So that's
Mm.
close to 18 months later. But also what we typically see is that those longer, sales cycle deals also tend to be a much higher average contract value as well. And so when it comes to, time horizon expectation setting, I guess that's another arrow in your quiver that you can use when you're trying to kind of sell this to senior management is that this sort of play potentially can help you close higher value deals as well, and it may take a little bit longer, but it'll be worth it for the company in the long run.
Yeah. And I know I'm getting a little bit ahead of the conversation here, but there's also there's ways to accelerate this. Like if you monitor kind of the signals that the account is sending out, how much the account is engaging with you without actually going into a dialogue with your sales team. If you have a really good collaboration with your SDR team, maybe you want to send them a list of here's the lurkers that fits our definition of our ICP. How about now trying to give them a call and see if we can get that meeting booked instead of just kind of sitting and waiting until they reach out to your competition instead. So like that close collaboration with the SDR team could also be something that limits the gaps. That's kind of one play. The other one is kind of, I know we have been talking about, Patrick, having audiences that are a little bit more boxed between here's somebody who's a very cold audience, here's somebody who's highly engaged. Maybe you want to have the highly engaged audience, you want to expand the group of people you're targeting within these accounts. So you kind of increase the pressure on this specific account. So yeah, if you run standard LinkedIn ads, it's gonna take a long time. If you're being more sophisticated, there are also ways to accelerate this process.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's a good point. So we have a couple of like deal acceleration plays coming up, but I think also this leads us really nicely onto the next slide, which is a kind of framework that we're kind of strong proponents of in Client Boost, which is leading and lagging indicators. And so with leading and lagging indicators, what you can do is you can start to measure performance before deals start turning into pipeline, before deals start turning into closed won. Because obviously, if you launch a new LinkedIn ads campaign, for example, you can't really afford to wait a whole year, 320 days before you start making optimization decisions, for example. And so with leading and lagging indicators, leading indicators are early signals that predict future pipeline. And then lagging indicators are results that are measured only once kind of a past marketing KPI has had time to convert. And so, oops, I'm going to have to just quickly go back a second here because it doesn't like going
Just
backwards
to kind
today.
of supplement you, Patrick, these it's so important that before you start your campaigns, your marketing experiments, that for whatever you're looking at, to both have that conversation about yes, we all want more revenue or we
Yeah.
want more pipeline, but we that's gonna take 3, 6, 9 months or something like that. So you also need those very leading indicators that the ship that you have set out on the kind of is sailing towards the right direction, and that would be those kind of leading indicators here.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so digging a little deeper into those leading indicators, I would say in platform leading indicators, you kind of have to take with a grain of salt. So the two that are most important for this sort of play is going to be audience penetration and frequency. So again, Stefan, talking about ways that we can expedite the path to pipeline a little bit and make that faster. One of the easiest ways we found to do that is to increase audience penetration and frequency. And the way that I describe this is it kind of increases your look surface area. So if we think of a market segment as one unit with it's kind of been overused at this point, but it's data backed and is true, which that 5% of the market is in market at any one time. By hitting that 80% audience penetration, you're really improving the likelihood that you're actually going to get in front of in-market buyers. And so what that leads to is some of the off-platform leading indicators that we can track. And so one of those, we actually use Dream Data to do this. So this is one of the KPIs that I'll be reporting to the KB team today and the KBC senior leadership team is ICP company traffic is growing. And so relatively straightforward to do. You just need a tool that can monitor the companies that are on your website and then just filter website traffic by whatever ICP company criteria you have. obviously you would expect to see some booked meetings and demos, and so they may not convert to pipeline immediately. Depends on how complex your product is, how many people are in the buying committee, what the average ACV is, for example. But again, that's, when you start seeing demos and meetings come in, that's usually a pretty good sign that you're going in the right direction. And then finally, just brand search volume. And so, if you've launched a LinkedIn ads campaign, but potentially it's been live for 3 months, but you're not necessarily seeing any pipeline, if ICP companies is growing, you're starting to get booked meetings, and you've seen a spike in brand search volume, you can have a pretty high level of confidence that what you're doing, is actually working.
Yeah.
And then, of course, after a period of time, you would then move to lagging indicators. And so this is interesting because I've kind of, even for the analysis that I'm doing for Client Boost's own performance right now, I've kind of switched now into the lagging indicators because we have 12 months of data on this new playbook that we've rolled out. And so things that we can do there is like within Dream Data, and you can see this on the deck here, we can actually analyze channels by influenced pipeline, influenced revenue. And so there's different ways you can do that depending on what marketing is graded against. I think for a lot of companies, it's pipeline. For me, I just prefer to do revenue. So you can see I've done that by closed won deals. Then there's also CAC ACV ratio. You can kind of measure that too. And then also you can just measure holistically within the CRM. So what is the overall pipeline and revenue list? What is the overall average deal value? And also, what direction is the close rate going in? Because again, what we would expect to see when marketing's working is, unless you're introducing new products that are lower value, you would really typically expect average deal value to be going up. You'd expect close rate to be going up, and pipeline and revenue also to be going up. Cool. So with that, final one here is just on how to actually present this. And so what I wanted to do was just present a framework that we use internally at Client Boost called goal pacing. And the reason I like this, again, coming back to one, sales and marketing alignment, two, being able to get senior leaders on board with marketing. I think one thing we can often do as marketers, and I know this because I've been guilty of it myself in the past, is throw way too many numbers, executives, way too many acronyms that they don't really understand. And what that can do is kind of put you in this tricky position where, executives just want to see everything going up and to the right. And so if you're showing them CTR and if you're showing them website traffic and all those different things, they're going to be questioning it when it's not going in the right direction. I noticed a little laugh there, Stefan. So I think that's probably happened to you in the past.
Yeah, I think there's this thing about metrics, that there are some metrics that you should just let them live in the marketing department, and then there's other metrics that you talk
Yeah.
with people outside the marketing department
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. I agree. And honestly, I think for the most part, I typically I kind of lean towards, if you can, try and keep it to, pipeline, revenue, CAC. Brand search volume and ICP company traffic can be good to also show execs as well, because the way that you can frame those is as future pipeline. But that's also, an important thing to do is, frame things, frame everything as future pipeline or future revenue instead of just clicks,
Ah,
instead of just
yeah. I'm
CTRs.
trying to educate the leaders here at Dream as well about these kind of both
Yeah.
the audience penetration and then like the branded search as well. And I definitely do think it matters.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So, just a quick kind of overview of how this goal pacing works. So, the way that we do it is we'll pick 1 to 2 core KPIs. So, for us, the two that I present to execs every week is pipeline, so SQL volume. For us, we're fortunate because we have a very short window between inbound call booked and SQL. It's usually
Mm.
around 5 to 10 days is probably about the average. So it's very straightforward for us to track that. And then we also measure ICP company traffic. as well. And so what we do is we essentially set a baseline based on historic performance. And then what we're trying to do is beat ourselves versus the previous quarter. And we're using like a little bit of math to do that. So if we're going to increase budget in the next quarter, then, we'll add a little bit of a stretch goal. Maybe it's a 20% lift or a 25% lift. Or if we're, decreasing a little bit because there's a seasonal dip, then maybe we just want to keep, we just want to maintain the baseline that we're at, or we don't want to lose more than 5%. And so once you've done that, what you can do is actually build a graph like this one that tracks, okay, week to week and month to month, here's how many SQLs we should have by this point. Here's how many ICP company website visitors we should have at this point. And here's where we are in comparison to where we're at. And what I love about this is it can just really, really communicate a story very, very quickly of how marketing is performing versus goals right now. And so what we typically say is that, if you're in the blue there, so if you're above where you need to be, that's good. Execs are going to be happy. And if you're in the red, what we would do at Client Boost is something called an ATF, which is okay, action plan, time frame, and feedback loop. And so what we're trying to do is say, okay, why are we off track on the goal that we're going after right now? How quickly do we think we can turn things around by making tweaks in the platform? And then we're going to do a feedback loop where we're reviewing this, on a weekly basis until we get to the point where we've, got things back on track.
Do you run this to your clients as well, or is it an internal one?
No, so this is both.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think a little bit
If I
of
were, yeah, I would really appreciate this as a buyer of the Client Boost services, that you can really see
yeah.
we're on course to the things we've planned to hit.
Yeah, that's a good vote of confidence. And just kind of dialing back a little bit to the Client Boost strategy at the beginning of the year, I was very bullish that I wanted us to grow our paid media channels just using the same playbooks and frameworks that we use with clients. And so I actually work with executors within our team on these channels, and then they'll have calls with me where they have separate goals for LinkedIn ads and separate goals for Google ads, and then use these same graphs. So yeah, I think this is a really, really great tool for people to get into, and can just simplify things, right? I can put together a pretty decent exec ready report in maybe 30 minutes to an hour every
Mm.
week, which I've been working with marketing leaders for close to 8 years at this point, and some of them can be spending days on these reports. And a lot of the time, it's just wasted effort that would be better spent, I think, on content creation or,
Yeah.
moving other pieces in the right direction. Awesome. So with that, that's kind of the tracking and optimization side. So we're going to get to the juicy stuff that I think everybody loves the most, which is new playbooks. And so the first playbook, we're not actually, we're going to move on to budget planning. So apologies for that. So first thing here with budget planning is we actually created something called the reach ratio. And this was based on a buddy of mine, Tony Flores, shout out if you're watching, who I worked with a couple of years ago, actually created this and ran kind of controlled experiments to figure out the math behind it. But essentially with LinkedIn ads, where a lot of companies go wrong is that they kind of guess the budget. So they say, we're going to try 5K a month, or we're going to try 10K a month and see how it works. And they'll then just want to target their full TAM. So it's like the full TAM could be, I don't know, I've seen some full TAMs of up to 1 million. And so it's like, we've got 3K a month. We want to target 1 million people. What usually happens then is after 3 months, your audience penetration is like 5% and your frequency is 2. And so that means that 5% of your total audience has maybe seen an ad twice. And so if you think just logically, it's very unlikely that the ads are going to have been effective from that perspective, because you would need to get the click immediately to be able to kind of get them into your retargeting loop to move those forward. And so the way that we recommend people plan budget is to calculate an audience size that works with that works with the budget that they have available, or to request budget based on the audience size that they have. And so, very straightforward way to do that is we have a tool that you'll get a link to afterwards where you can input the audience size, you can input a target audience penetration. We recommend zero 0.8. Then you can input frequency factor. This is going to vary depending on the size of the audience. That's just to do with how LinkedIn ads as a platform actually works. And so it unfortunately doesn't scale linearly. If you want more reach, you just have to accept that you're going to have more frequency. And then you can also input cost per 1,000 impressions data. And so two ways to do this. So easiest one is just to have your own CPM benchmark. That's the way that we do it because we have so much historic data. But Stefan, I know Dream Data, I think, has puts out regular reports anyway, benchmark reports on, industry level CPMs, which that would be the next best option for advertisers. And then you can
I
see
love this calculator so much. I just Googled to find it, so I'll try it on myself after the presentation.
I
I
love
get
it.
the
I love it.
frequency one, Patrick.
Yeah.
That's kind of also a bit. There's many opinions about that. Like you put in 12. What's kind of your take on like how much does every person need to see an ad?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the truth is, if you put the right ad in front of the right person, and I've kind of been able to validate this in the last month with a pretty bold test that I've ran, which is if you hit a high audience penetration with a high frequency, you can get pipeline pretty quickly, or most companies. I don't think everyone can.
No,
So,
no.
in the past, I worked for a vertical farming company. They're not going to get pipeline within a month, but I think a lot of companies can. And I think it's to do with the fact that people with a pain that are in market right now, if they see your ad and they're undecided on who they're going to choose to solve that pain point, and you give them a compelling reason to choose you, they will choose you. So in some cases, classic example is this wasn't paid, but I posted yesterday about a very specific problem on LinkedIn, and it got 20 impressions. Somebody saw it once for the first time that's never interacted with any of my content before, and then instantly came as an inbound lead. And so it
Sweet.
can be very low impressions, but I would say on the whole, higher frequency is better. And it probably gets to the point of diminishing returns on social at maybe 20. But there's a lot of data out there that says like 3 impressions is the peak. The reason I don't think that's relevant on LinkedIn is just because I don't think every impression is somebody has actually seen the ad.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just they've had an opportunity to see it. So
Yeah,
it's probably
yeah.
between 3 and 7 in actuality, but in ad platform terms, probably closer to 20. But I mean, we hit these exact targets this year, and had a pretty good year on LinkedIn. Like we've generated a good amount of pipeline. Have also been able to reduce CAC
Yeah,
pretty significantly despite rising ad costs.
super nice.
Cool. So now onto the playbooks, which is my favorite thing to talk about. And so first one is connected TV ads. So Stefan, I don't know if you guys are running these, but these have been super successful for us. And I
Yeah.
speculate it's because they're non-skippable. And so that means that the audience essentially is kind of forced
Yeah.
to watch them, like TV ads back in the day. And so what that does is essentially improves mental availability and recall. So you're the first business that comes to mind as companies move from out market to in market. One of the best reasons to run these is just there's less competition because there are a few advertisers using this. So I know this from working with clients trying to get people onto this playbook. There are a few that want to experiment with it because it's relatively unknown, and there's also a lot of fear of getting on the wrong placements for some companies, and you don't have a great deal of control over that on LinkedIn. But I mean, when you talk to your reps, the actual placements that they have available are pretty good. Like you can get on Paramount, you can get on Hulu, I believe. And so it's all, for me, all solid placements. And so really straightforward. Yeah, sorry, go
We
ahead,
shouldn't
Stefan.
talk too much about it, Patrick, because it's great right now.
Yeah, yeah, I feel like I'm digging my own grave a little bit, giving away all this stuff
But
that's
I
gonna
agree
make
right now,
my
like
life
it has
harder.
that kind of unskippable feature which is immensely great. Maybe that like plugging Dream did a little bit here. Like if you see a normal TV ad in a
Yeah,
consumer space, you're not able to kind of tie that to revenue. But if you're running this ad using Dream Data and LinkedIn together, then we can actually say that this person from this company consumed the ad as part of their buying journey.
yeah, yep, exactly, exactly, and so that's the first one, connected TV. I think this is, just a no-brainer for most companies, and I think probably this is the more niche you are, because you have to remember, like, we're targeting, marketers, which is probably one of the most saturated audiences
Yeah.
to target. Everybody loves to target marketers. The more niche you go, so if you're in, like, a really niche piece of tech software, I think this would be even more relevant and more useful, because those CPMs for those bigger audiences tend to be higher anyway. And so if more of your competitors are not using this format, then that's a really quick win for you to drive down CPMs, get in front of more prospects, more cheaply. And then the net result is that you're then able to, drive down CAC, drive down cost per SQL, and just make the whole marketing engine much more efficient.
Mm, I agree. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's only rolled out to US and UK market this far. Just if people are kind of sitting in Germany wanting to flick it on there.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. I do believe it is coming to Europe at some point.
Yeah.
They just haven't figured out the way to do that. I think that's
Yeah.
in line with GDPR. Yeah,
Yeah. But this is, yeah, super great.
yeah, for sure. Next one. This one is my favorite, and so this is thought leader ads, and this has been a huge part of our strategy this year, Stefan. I know it's been a huge part of yours. Can you talk a little bit through how you guys are approaching thought lead
Yeah, I'm
ads?
really happy to. And you're right. This has kind of been like the largest part of our LinkedIn ads budget has been these thought leader ads. Maybe simply to explain it, you can take any person on LinkedIn and you can sponsor the post that they've made if they accept you sponsoring the posts. And I think what is kind of apparent and what most people see when they start sponsoring these posts is that people on LinkedIn tend to a large degree engage a lot more with people as opposed to kind of those very branded ads from your company profile. So it has kind of that ability to a little bit slide under the radar or like under the defense systems of people because it's an actual person who wrote something. Um, it has some major advantages, in my opinion. One being that since if a post did pretty good organically, you have already have the validation cleared that this is going to be a pretty good creative in front of your audience. So the play that we typically do is I run a super simple model here, Patrick, where it's kind of I think we have at any given time we have somewhere between 20 and 30 thought lead ads running. And then once a month, I just like X the lowest 50% in terms of engagement rate and then replace it with new ones. And then I see next month which of these posts have good engagement rates. And then I just continuously X the one that doesn't have good engagement rates. What I then use here is the matched audience functionality that LinkedIn has, which is like, I would say the best targeting in B2B marketing anywhere. So it's insane that people throw money into other systems where here's a system where you can upload all the accounts you want and you can pick the job that they have and then you can make sure your ads get in front of these people. So I'm a very big fan of these types of ads. We have tried all sorts of things in these ads as well. Sometimes text ads does well, sometimes memes does well, sometimes videos does well. So I think it's a little bit about trying to lean into what you're good at in your company and like just make people produce the type of content they like. And then the metric I study a lot is the engagement rate. I don't care so much about getting the click to our website as long as I can see it's the right accounts and the right accounts appreciates the content we've created.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's very similar to process to how we approached it throughout the year. I think one thing I wanted to again talking about ways that companies can maybe expedite the path to pipeline a little bit. One thing that we have found to work well, at least at kind of encouraging people. And to be transparent, like we didn't optimize anything for clicks all year. So we only used brand awareness objective, optimized for reach, and set the frequency cap to 3 every 7 days. So everybody in the audience would only see an ad potentially 3 times a week. But having kind of retroactively done the analysis of where were the trends in terms of which ads had the most attributed closed won, and I use this data um with a grain of salt. And so when I look at the in-platform data that tells me which ad had closed won and which one didn't, I'm not necessarily thinking that that ad exactly drove that much closed won. More what I'm thinking is, am I seeing a trend where there's one specific ad that has a disproportionate amount of closed one attributed to it than others? Because that's a signal to me that there was something in that specific ad that really resonated with the audience. And so a good example is this very simple post right here. And we did exactly the same thing as you, Stefan, where we saw video thought leaders worked really well, images and especially memes worked really well, but also text only worked really well. And so for a lot of companies out there that struggle to get things like memes signed off, struggle to get videos signed off, these text only posts work really, really well. They're pretty low lift to create. So most marketers can write these themselves for the subject matter expert that they want to post it. I've
Yeah.
even seen success of, for example, a marketing director writing these posts from their own account to an audience that's completely unrelated and still seeing a decent volume, a decent lift in kind of opportunity volume just from posting it from
Mhm.
their own account.
I think
And
you're
so
like,
I think
there's
that,
one really good tactical advice here as well. Like, and then like you have your employees posting on LinkedIn, you don't want to have links in the post as it sets out on its organic journey. But as you write here,
yeah,
like after 48 to 72 hours, it's probably dead, the post. And then you can go in and edit and put in the link, because the link is
yeah.
no longer prohibiting the post from continuing its organic journey, and the link kind of shortens the way from the post to your website. I think so. I think that's a really good tactical suggestion.
Yeah, it is. And, I read a post on LinkedIn recently where somebody said they had spoken to LinkedIn, and LinkedIn said there's definitely nothing in the algorithm that reduces reach of posts with a link. I think from my own personal experience, I just don't
That's a
believe
lie.
it, because for example, the post I did yesterday had a link on it, and it was just because it was for something very specific where, yeah, a YouTube video I was sending people to, so
Mm.
it made sense to have the link on the original post, and it had like 18 impressions in the first 32 minutes, which is, I have close to 16,000 followers. So I'm like, okay, that's a bit wild. And, it got a bit of traction towards the end of the day. But yeah, it definitely makes more sense to add those URLs kind of 48 to
That's
72
my
hours later.
definitely my experience as well. That like it
Yeah.
makes sense. LinkedIn wants you to stay in their ecosystem, and if you're saying, "Hey,
Yeah.
off the ecosystem," of course that's not good for their business.
Yeah, yeah. I think we've been saying this about other social media platforms for the longest time, so I don't know why it would make any difference
No.
with LinkedIn. So with that, that's thought leader ads. One more demand generation play, which is interesting because this one actually had the lowest customer acquisition costs. This play, and so by that I mean it was a significant difference where we had, I think this was at the demand gen level. So bear in mind, this is cold audiences that weren't necessarily optimizing for pipeline. We were just trying to build retargeting audiences with them. Um, this one had like, I think, $1,000 customer acquisition cost versus like 1.7 for CTV, which is wildly lower, and spent a lot less. So it was very statistically significant for me.
Yeah.
And so again, I think one of the plays that makes these ungated document ads work really well is um, the the idea for us is that if we wanted to gate, I'm not necessarily against gating. What I don't like about gating is you have to use either the conversion objective or you have to use the lead generation objective, which everybody use, which means that they have really high inflated CPMs, which means then that the ads also don't get to as many potential prospects. And so the platform is just less effective than it could be. Whereas from my experience, when you have selected your own accounts based on your ICP, you've done the research of speaking to them and understanding what problems they have and design the content for them in their words, you can use something like an awareness objective, or I think in this case, we use the engagement objective. And so based on that, we're actually testing engagement objective for thought leader ads going forward more as well, instead of awareness. But what we're able to do is drive down the CPMs, get in front of more buyers for less. And the idea was that it would build mental availability in the prospects who aren't in market right now. But
Mm.
what we would do very simply with every single document is we would just put this subtle marketing offer CTA right at the end of each document. So if somebody is in market, and the likelihood that somebody that's engaged with it is in market is pretty high, since it's a very painful problem. Somebody is, dealing with, I'm running paid ads right now. It's not driving demand. They want to fix that problem. And then they read the whole document, get to the end, and they're like, oh, these guys can help me out. And so we just found that this play worked really, really well for us. And I think more
Mm.
companies should experiment with that. And it kind of allows you to just build trust before you kind of go in with the sales message as well.
I just put up like a 40-page presentation yesterday on LinkedIn, and it's doing really well. So I think we should probably run that as a thought leader ad
Yeah.
as well. Now that I see you talking about this,
Yeah, 100%. I would recommend giving it a try because it really can improve the audience penetration
I
pretty
guess it's
massively.
also a little bit of like a safe space as a kind of you researching a brand that you're not in there like booking a demo call or anything like that, but you're still curious about this brand and you get to kind of dwell through a little bit what's this brand about without you being in this like immediate sales conversation afterwards. So it kind of resonates
Yeah,
with me why this is a good format.
for sure. And I think this is an interesting thing that I need to figure out how to communicate this better on LinkedIn. Because one thing I'm a big advocate for is that I think d- some marketers can be afraid to sell in content, and they think the job of content is only to educate. And for me, I think you can do both at the same time. The problem is you can't just have the content only be the sales message. It has to have
Yeah.
something else of value in it that's going to build the trust. You kind of say you're giving somebody something for their time, and then if it's high enough value and there's a sales message at the end, the people that aren't in market are probably not going to be turned off. They're just going to be
Mm.
happy that you've genuinely tried to help them. And the people that are in market are going to know that you also are able to help them solve this problem if they don't want to do it by themselves. And so I think that's also why it's so effective.
I'm definitely guilty in not I'm not always remembering to see the sales CTA at the end of things.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
thanks for that reminder.
Yeah, I mean, it's a common problem. It was a mistake I made probably earlier in the year as well, and so this was more of a like Q3, Q4 revelation for us. Um,
Great.
anyways, this is everything on the demand generation side, and so what we're going to do now is jump onto some activation plays. And so the first one was kind of building activation pipeline audiences, which was something I think either you, Stefan, or potentially the account manager that we were working with at the time put us onto. Do you want to talk through how companies can kind of build those active pipeline audiences, what the benefits are, and then maybe I'll jump into the kind of content that we saw work best for that.
Oh yeah, man, I'm really happy to, Patrick, and feel free to kind of jump in at any point. I think the idea here is that like accounts are kind of in different mental states and importance at any given point in your timeline. There's those accounts that you're not even speaking to. There's those accounts that are actually in your sales pipeline now, right now, and then there's those accounts that just need to get across the line. And what we kind of enable you to in Dream that is to kind of dissect accounts by what pipeline stage that they're at or not at, as we talked about in the beginning. It can also be really helpful just kind of looking at the engagement rate of those accounts that have still not reached MQL or SQL, and that can be a really great audience, for example, for your SDR team to go after that, like a super high engagement rate, but we're not speaking to anybody on these accounts. So they're clearly in market, but they're also clearly not talking to us. So we really need to get into that conversation now. That would be my kind of first one, maybe also as a marketer, that I want the SDR team to make sure that we pull them on. Something that we're doing ourselves is whenever accounts hit our sales pipeline, we expand the targeting group of people that we're going for in the accounts. I think you hear nowadays the stakeholder groups, buying committees get larger and larger, and we definitely want to try to kind of air cover the sales team as much as we can, like switching on CXO targeting of these accounts, or whatever makes sense in your the accounts you're targeting. It could also be, whereas kind of, I mean, most accounts don't like to see, at least that's my pre-made opinion about it, that people don't want to be like specifically sold to with features in the beginning. Whereas if they're in a sales process, maybe it does make sense to do like really hardcore product marketing to say, this is this feature, it does this thing, and this is why it's valuable. So we also have some campaigns that are very narrowly scoped. Whereas like most of our marketing is very broad, kind of just top of mind marketing. But once you hit the sales pipeline, suddenly you see demos of the product, suddenly you see feature mentioned and stuff like that. It could also be that all the kind of people on top of that, yeah, we can talk about frequency also. So maybe you want a certain frequency when they're outside your sales pipeline, but once they're in sales conversation, maybe 10 is definitely not good enough. Maybe you actually want to go to 100 because you have a very important account that you're trying to squeeze through to becoming close to one.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And I think, it's interesting you mentioned about the kind of product marketing not working at the cold level, but working much better once the prospects are in pipeline, because it was interesting when I was doing the analysis. And I feel like this is a revelation I've just kind of discovered on the spot, which is we saw that for us last year, the least effective format on LinkedIn was single image ads. So they performed worse than any other
Mm,
format. But the interesting thing was I approached it from a product marketing perspective, which was really trying to sell what I kind of thought of and what I kind of took as the differentiators in terms of, for us, a feature is a specific way that we do things, like the goal pacing grid, for example, or the reach ratio. I'd call that kind of a feature of our service. And so I was trying to sell those with these single image ads. It didn't work, but on the inverse, the best performing ad type for us, in terms of cost per acquisition, and obviously it's going to be lower because this was retargeting existing pipeline, but it was single images, but only in the retargeting layer. And for
yeah.
us, I didn't experiment with as much kind of product marketing in this layer, but I think you're right. Probably that would have worked as well. But what worked for us here was kind of objection handling, and so
Mm, that's super
analyzing
nice.
the sales calls to find out what's the most common reason somebody says no that we think, or somebody's on the fence about, that we think we have a strong opinion on why that's not necessarily the case. And then we just created loads of ads around that. And again, really, really high frequency. So some of the frequencies on those campaigns were, 20 plus. And as a result, it was, really successful. And so you can see here, this ad, this was the best single image ad of all of them, which is 83% of our clients hit their Q3
Mm,
goals. And the reason that that's so successful is because the number one objection that companies have is that they're going to sign with an agency, but they're not going to get the performance that they
Yeah.
expect. And so by having that objection handling data, front and center, really clearly communicated on a high frequency, makes it really successful. And then the other thing that I think is valuable for people to know, because we tested both, is that idea of expanding the buying committee. And so what didn't work as well for us is when we used contact lists. So we can do both in Dream Data, and we tried both. But
Mm,
what worked the best, and you can see here the active pipeline audiences, is when we actually expanded the company list and targeted full departments. And so for
mm,
us, that would be marketing, for example. That worked much, much better than going just after the contacts that had,
mm.
reached out to us. But again, only, once they were actively in pipeline did that make sense to do.
Yeah, I love that type of marketing where kind of you just rip something out, like some sentence out of some kind of sales conversation with a customer or prospect, and just put it straight up on your website. And it's been an enormous resource for us as well to do customer interviews or look through gong
Yeah.
calls to hear what is people saying about these things. And the likelihood of is if one prospect is saying it, it's probably on the mind of others as well. And you know what is, if it's on the minds of many, then if you put it on LinkedIn, the engagement rate will also be quite decent.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Honestly,
That's a
that
good idea.
yeah, that process that you kind of just mentioned there, I would say is essentially our entire content strategy this year. So it's just analyzing sales calls. And for us, what we tend to hyper focus on, I've said this a few times on LinkedIn, is first sales calls is really good. Maybe not as much for this objection handling. You really probably want to talk to the sales team about that, get some later stage calls when the objections come up. But for the
Mm,
demand generation plays and finding content topics for cold prospects, those first sales calls are gold, because that's where you find the person when the pain is most painful. And so the things that come up on those calls are going to be the things that resonate the most with the audience in the feed too.
yeah. Patrick, timekeeping. We need to pick the winners now.
Yeah,
We
we need.
only
So
have
we've got
7
like
minutes left on the
yeah,
calendar
we've got
promise here.
yeah, so we've got five plays to get through. So I think we've kind of covered buying committee retargeting
Yeah,
there. The one that I definitely want people to learn about, again, because we've seen so much success with it, is the kind of AI signal based targeting. And this is relative. It's not super new, but relatively new feature to Dream Data. I know it's been a big focus from a marketing perspective for you guys over the last few months
yeah.
as well. So could you talk to people about kind of how to make the most of the AI signal based
Yeah,
targeting?
maybe I give the technical description first, and then you say what are the 1 or 2 things that you use it for, and then I can continue. I think that would be a good
Yeah,
trustworthy way of doing it. So
that
so
works.
the vision we've had with Dream Data's AI signals has been to say we've heard about intent signals for years, but all the advice you get always ends up being very generic, very broad advice about what intent data is. The focus of Dream Data's AI signals is to say that Dream Data contains all your go-to-market data. So we know everything about every journey, about what you win and what is unique for you when you win accounts. So it's not just a G2 category visit, but perhaps it's somebody looking at your security documentation. So the things that happens in your data warehouse is completely unique to you. And what our AI does is that it scans all ongoing journeys to see, are some of these journeys showing behavior of somebody who's uniquely positioning to buy our specific product. So it's not all the broad advice about intent data. It's actually what's true intent for your company. And that's what we're surfacing here on the list that you've shared here, Patrick, that that you can kind of then orchestrate your like your outreach, your activities of your SDRs and BDRs and marketing teams and salespeople based on true intent for your company.
Yeah, absolutely. This was one of my kind of favorite additions to the Dream Data platform as well. And what I loved and love most about this is that it also updates in real time. And so this is maybe something that's a cool feature about Dream Data as well, is that it's just constantly analyzing buyer journeys and will update these signals based on the most recent buyer journeys. The way that we used these was honestly, this was we almost replaced retargeting with this to some degree. And so we kind of fused a few different things together, which was high intent signals. So for us, that was anything you can see here, strong and significant. So anything on both earlier, kind of medium, and later in the journey that was strong or significant, we pushed that signal into a retargeting list. Then we layered on top of that. Dream Data also has engagement scores, and so we said any company with an engagement score above 75%.
Mm.
And then we had two ways of running this activation play, and so one was we took all those signals, we took all the engaged companies, put them in a list together, and then excluded pipeline and incentivized and used incentivized conversation ads for those. So these are people that have shown intent but haven't yet booked a meeting with the sales team. And so we found that this was just a really good way of kind of getting people on calls. The other play that worked really, really well was to take that same audience, add pipeline to it. And this is really important because I've come across a lot of companies who will try and exclude pipeline from their retargeting campaigns because they don't want, that's usually when sales and marketing are fighting for credit. And so they don't want it, to seem like they're trying to take points away from the sales team or
Mm.
sales, that's definitely the wrong thing to do. So you want to be, as kind of Stefan mentioned, the pipeline audience is the most important audience to target, and you will see lifts in close rate as a result of retargeting existing pipeline. And so what we did with those is just very standard kind of trust building exercises, like video testimonials worked incredibly well for this audience.
Awesome.
Awesome. We're
Oh,
kind of at time there. I was
yeah.
hoping we'd have a little bit of time for Q&As, but I think there's a lot of stuff in there, a lot of stuff to kind of you know kind of think through after this today. So I know my DMs are open if anybody has any questions on anything that we walked through today. Stefan, I imagine yours are. Just before we sign off, if people
100%.
want to find out a little bit, a little bit more about Dream Data, what should they do?
Yeah, I would say hit us up on dreamdata.io or just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to answer any questions people might have.
Awesome. Thanks for your time, Stefan. Appreciate it. Thanks everybody for watching.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Patrick.
Cheers.